Howdy, Model Railroad Talk fans and followers. We're back with another video. This one is actually going to be, we started sometime last year talking about 3D printing and model railroading. So this video is actually going to be giving you some tips and showing you some stuff on the computer as far as getting it set up, at least for resin printing. So hope you stick around because we're going to get this show on the tracks. All right, so as you can see here are my two printers. I am running the Elegoo Saturn 3s, and the one on the right there, you see the build plate is up, so that means it's done, which means I got to check it. And the one on the left is still doing its thing. One tip I will tell you, if like this is in our basement, it's kind of in the corner here, as you can see. It's cooler over here. Obviously I have a heater here, and the one thing I learned is basically you have to have your resin roughly around 80 degrees. Otherwise, if it's lower than that, yes, it will print. If it's but if it's too low, you won't print a thing. And just to kind of show you some of the buildings that I've 3D printed so far, the one on the right here, obviously I still have to do more work. I've got the windows and stuff. I'm working on eventually getting those painted. This one I have to paint inside walls here, and you can see actually I went online and found an interior that I laid on there, cut out for the door, which the door and window go in, and then I had to set the inside ones in. The one, this 3 run building here, and this one over here, yes, they still need primed. They're printed, obviously. And of course you have the parts for that big building there, and I have the parts for the smaller one there. So as you can see, I still have more work to do, but that kind of just shows you the level of detail that you can get in these. Obviously I have touch-up paint work to do on this one. I'm going to add green to the front here and stuff, but that's where I'm at so far, and you can clearly see the detail of it. So what I've learned up to this point, especially now that we're in the middle of winter, is basically that while it was summertime and I had my 3D printers, actually I had one just to the left here and I had one at the other side before I moved them in the corner there, which I did that because of building the upper level and just the layout. It was too confined. I didn't want, especially resin 3D printing, it can get messy. And I just didn't want the mess in my layout room, right? So when I moved them back into the corner there, didn't think nothing of it. Well, I mean, we have heat down here, but that was back when it was still warmer outside. I was having 50-50, or probably more than that, probably 70-30 results. 70% of my prints were good prints and about 30 were failed prints. And when I say 30% are failed prints, that's, they may have printed all of it fine, but one corner started lifting. Basically it started lifting off the build plate, and so it kind of tweaked it and stuff like that. That's what I call a failed print. It's basically doesn't come off there perfect. So I didn't think nothing of it. I had, even after I moved it over there, I had print after print after print that was really, really good. And then I started trying to print some stuff for our good friend Eric over at the Warbonds channel for his 1-inch scale GP60M. And I started having problems and wouldn't print. And is it the file? What is it? You know, because that I had to actually create. And just to kind of give you an idea, this is the part that he wanted me to create for him. And This is obviously a smaller version. I had to scale it up, but I went into my one program and actually created that because there was no files on anything like that. And I'm like, well, did I pass the file on wrong or whatever? And I'm going to show you here in a bit what I'm talking about when I say slicing and supporting and stuff like that. But started wondering, did I mess that up? Well, lo and behold, I did some research, a little more research, and it never dawned on me before that, I mean, the basement, it's probably sitting at 65 degrees. It's always generally about that all year long. Some days it's a little warmer, some days a little colder, that kind of thing, depending on the temperature outside. But generally it's in that range. Well, after here recently, very recently, doing the research and you seen the heater, I realized that ever since I put that heater in there, every print I've been doing has been 100% perfect. The only issues with the prints are is if it's in the file or I didn't support it correctly, that kind of thing. So very important if you are looking at getting into resin 3D printing for model railroading. Either A, make sure you have your 3D printers and your resin in an area where it's kept relatively warm. If it's in the basement, like, a lot of our model railroads are, and that's where your other hobbies go. I know I do not, as messy as resin can be, I don't want it upstairs, and the girlfriend boss lady will not allow me to have it upstairs, and rightfully so. I don't blame her. I don't even want it up there myself. I thought about storing my resin upstairs, but there again, if I have a little resin on the bottle or one tips and the cap breaks, then I've got a mess upstairs. Where down here, it's in the basement. We have concrete floors. It's not as big of an ordeal if something happens. So, anyways, keep your prints, your resin and your prints, at least get them up to temperature. I say roughly in that 75 to 90 degree range, and you will have excellent prints as long as you do this right, which we're going to move on to right here, right now. Okay, so you can see I'm in a different view, right? I had to switch over to my computer, and this actually on YouTube here gives you kind of my idea, my setup for my audio podcast, but I'm actually recording video right now. So what I'm going to do is, and you'll notice the sound's different. It goes through a different, obviously a different system. So, so what we were talking about slicing, what exactly am I talking about? Well, that is basically, and we've talked about this before, but I guess to kind of reiterate, if you haven't either watched the other videos in that series up to this point, or if this is your first one, or you don't remember, instead of having to go back, basically slicing, think of it as a loaf of bread at a factory. What does the factory do before they ship out most breads anyways? And that is they slice it into pieces, right? Into layers. And then they, in a sense, put it back together, put it in a bag. So you buy a whole loaf, it's sliced. Well, 3D printers, whether it's resin or filament, they print in layers. So you have to be able to take an object, a solid object like we showed you, and make it, basically slice it and have individual files, in a sense, commands for each layer. You can adjust how thick, how, and we're not here to get into the specifics of how thick each layer, how fast, how quick, blah, 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 because that really all depends on which resin printer you have, and filament printer as well. But as far as the resin side, but also what are you using for resin? I currently use, and I absolutely love, and I know there's going to be naysayers out there, but what I use for my modeling, because let's face it, when things are on our railroad, we're not really handling them, right? But even for like rail cars and stuff, which I'm planning on trying to print down the road, my own rail cars and stuff like that. But I use Elegoo has what's called 8K, which is you think of like 4K for your TV, and they actually have, I think they're getting up to 8K for TVs now, right, for resolution. So that's basically what it is. It's 8K ABS like resin. So meaning ABS like, so if you know what ABS plastic is, it's somewhat impact resistant, and I mean it's got a little bit of flexibility, not a whole lot, but a lot of gamers like using the ABS stuff for their figurines because if they drop them, there's less chance of when it hits the floor, it's going to flex a little more than a standard resin. So I have found that the difference in price, which isn't much for a bottle, which they sell them in grams, basically, so 1,000-gram bottle, the price difference, we're only talking like maybe $1, $1.50 to go to the 8K ABS-like resin. And I like it. My printers, the Saturn 3s, Elegoo Saturn 3s, they are considered a 12K printer. However, they're really not. They're slightly under a 12K. They're probably 11.5 for K. But anyways, we only have 8K resin available to us unless you get into the very, very expensive stuff that like big companies and corporations use to make prototype things. And then you're talking some big bucks, and you don't want to be spending that much and putting it in even like a machine like mine. So, but anyways, we have to basically we have to slice our files, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to switch this over so it will show you. Okay. Here you can see I have some windows for a building I'm working on. All right. And so for starters, we have this in here, and I am using, this is Elegoo it's Satellite by Elegoo. They used to use it's called Voxel Dance Tango, and it's still available. That comes with the 3D printers. I actually have 2 licenses because I have 2 printers. But this is basically your build plate. All right. We put in, and what I'm going to do here real quick is I'm going to throw in, we're going to get all the Windows stuff put into, maybe not. Well, it's just being slow. Sorry about the volume. Let's turn that down. How about that? So there we go. All right. So basically, this is, I have set up in here my printer. My 3D printer is set up in here as, if you see up here in the top right corner by my mouse, Elegoo Saturn 3. Even though the resin says normal, when I go into the profile of this one, I actually have my ABS like resin, the 8K ABS like resin in there, and that's what you see, kind of down here, printing time. That's as it sits now, and this is kind of nice. Like I have in, this kind of shows you as this sits right now. It will cost me 61 cents to print as it sits right now. Well, we're not done yet, because while yes, technically you can print it as it is right now. And yes, this is working a little slow because I am on, I'm trying to do more than my computer can handle. I need to look into getting some more RAM for it. So please bear with me. So we've got windows and doors for it's basically it's a building I'm printing, but it's 3 buildings that are connected together like a downtown thing. So here we have the windows and doors. So basically, we need to take these and get them set up and sliced like the loaf of bread, so they're in layers. And this will kind of show you how we go about it. First of all, you can try printing like this, just as it is on a build plate for resin printing. You may get lucky, but the problem is with these small parts that you see here, when you go to scrape it off, you're more than likely going to break them, and you take a chance of basically distortion when you're printing. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to rotate them. They always say put them at a 45-degree angle, and some things I do, but I've found for a lot of the parts that I'm printing, for both HO scale, well, any HO scale, I printed some parts for our good friend Benjamin in N scale, and even for, I showed you the air caps for our good friend Eric over at Warbond's channel for his 1-inch GP60M. I printed them like this. I took, and you saw I flipped them up to a 15-degree angle. Now, what's the next thing? Okay, there, if you look, this is my build plate right here. This is, in a sense, representing what they're going to be built to. Well, we can't just very well print it like that. You can't print in thin air, right? So if you look at the top, and every slice program is, while they all do the same thing, some programs do more, some do less, and so this is the one I'm using. And unfortunately, like I said, because we are recording this on Riverside right now, it's being slow, unfortunately. So I got to wait for it to do its thing here. But we need to support it. And once we get it supported, if it'll do what it needs to do, watch, the computer will freeze up on me. So yeah, we had to pause for a minute there because it did freeze up on me. So we are, if you can see now, the screen is a little bit different. We're not going to get into all the support types. Basically, if you look where I'm at over on the right here, you'll see there's different types of supports. You always want to try to do the thinnest support possible for the item you are printing, okay? Because the bigger the supports, that's, if you look right here in the corner, you can actually see that how it, like this right here is the item, and here's your support. And so basically your contact area that it's contacting the parts. You want to try to keep that to a minimum as possible, as much as possible, less to have to clean up, or if you have them too thick, like on these smaller parts, if you have like the real heavy supports, you're probably going to end up breaking your parts before you break the supports off. But you also need heavy enough supports that basically when 3D printer prints, the build plate comes down, goes into the resin, shoots UV light of whatever that layer, remember we sliced it, so whatever that layer is, or we will be slicing, I should say, and then it actually sticks to the bottom of the tank, and then when it lifts up, you can actually hear it kind of pull from the bottom of that tank. That is normal. That's because you just cured resin onto that next piece, that layer, right? So if you have too small of a support and you have a big area, like let's say this piece over here, if you look to the left, let's say that was just one big flat piece, and I had real tiny supports. Once that piece gets so big, it's just going to not stay on the supports. It's going to stick to the bottom of the tank, and then you have issues. So I generally use the automatic supports, and this can be a quick process. This can be a little bit longer. Obviously, as we are recording, we're using a little computing power, so it takes it a tad longer. But we also have 4 different files sitting here on our build plate. If you have one file on there, depending on the size of it, it may be quicker. But you will see what I'm talking about on the supports once it gets popped up here. Okay, we have them popped up here, so you can actually see the supports now. It looks like a forest, right? Um, and that is because it's supposed to look that way. What it does is it builds a base plate that the supports go to. Then it builds the supports on it. And if I zoom in here, you can see where the supports contact to help basically so that piece isn't trying to be printed in midair, which you can't do. Now, we can, I do have done this in the past, manually edit supports. Let's see if I can get this to do what I would like to do here. I have not used it. This is a new program for me, so I don't know. Let's see here. There we go. Maybe. Well, it's not letting me do it. Instead of messing with it, I'm not going to. But anyways, we're going to get back to this one. So here's the problem too. You see this red area? That means that with the supports, it's going to be off of the build plate, which normally is when I print actually this particular building I am printing, the roof, the supports are actually off the roof. Yeah, the supports are off the roof, whatever. I'm a bad singer, I get it. But anyways, so you want to, if you're able to try to keep your supports in off that, the better, but your support base, sometimes it's not possible if you like this is got a builder big plate, bigger build plate than say like Elegoo's smaller Mars line. And that's why one of the reasons why I went with this particular printer is that the bigger build plate, bigger, taller I can do. And I'm glad I did because there's some things I can't print. I'm actually wanting to get a filament printer for those. But as you can see, we now have supports under it, so the parts aren't floating in midair. Now, the one thing I did learn, and I don't know how quickly this will go back, it did. If you look right over here to the right where my cursor is, see where it says Z lift height? I used to, when I first got into this, I was like, well, I don't want a ton of supports. That wastes, that's resin that, that's being wasted. Well, if you really think about it, these supports, depending on what style supports you use, if you're modeling a scrap mill or you have GONs on your railroad that you want scrap for them, you can actually cut those up, cure them, paint them, airbrush them, whatever you want, and use those as scrap pieces. So it's not necessarily getting thrown away if you don't want it to. But here's the thing. I was doing at the minimum, which I think was like 5 millimeters. And for these smaller parts, I was breaking parts left and right because there wasn't enough support area to where when I was either using my fingers or my, basically it's like a putty knife, a flexible putty knife with a very sharp edge, to cut them off, and they were breaking. So I found ideally 15 millimeters is great for that. By all means, you're more than welcome to use some of these settings or things that I'm telling you. If they work, great. If not, make adjustments. But now that we've added supports, remember what I told you about, like is saying for the price, I went from 61 cents to $1, call it 58 is what this is going to cost me in resin. Now you thinking, oh, well, I can print all that for $1.58. Well, yes, but I can't tell you I yet have recouped my cost in the stuff I've printed that I've had good because it's a learning process. But this also kind of shows you over here too, the printing time for it to print all this. It's going to take roughly 2 hours and 15 minutes, depending on the printer setup. I know if I were to use the other program that they sent, and this program is new to me as far as because they just recently released this, and this is their new proprietary software that they send out with the printers.
I haven't had a lot of time to play around with it, but I know the other one, there was 3 different modes you can do. There was basically the standard mode, then you had dynamic mode, then you had like super fast mode. I do not recommend doing the super fast mode, especially with our smaller stuff. Depending on what scale you're in, it can give you unsatisfactory results. So we have our parts on here. Our parts are oriented that they're not going to be hitting each other when it prints. Everything, the bases look good. They're supported properly. We are good to go. What's the next step? We're going to go over here. See down here where it says slice? Well, we're going to hit slice. And you will see, probably take a little bit, slicing the parts. And what that is doing is like what the bread factory does. They have their loaf of bread. They're putting it through a machine. It's slicing each loaf of bread into 15 slices or 10 slices, depending on the brand of bread you purchase. That's basically what it's doing. Is creating slices from the base all the way out to the part. And it's, as you can see, it can take a little bit. There's actually, I think even if I was not recording this currently, it still would be slower because there's a lot of extra parts. Now you look over here, you're like, I don't see anything. I mean, you do, but you don't see the part. So what we're going to do here is we're going to drop all the way down. And you can watch on the left or you can watch over here where I'm at, but this shows you every single layer. So every time it goes down, it's going to, that's where it starts. That's what it's going to put on the screen and print and print and print and print and so on and so forth until, if you look on the left, it's like building it up. Now on the left, I don't know why this program doesn't show you the end product when it's up, but it doesn't. But basically, you look right here by my cursor, 684 layers. That's how many we're going to have. So what we're going to do is we're going to save the slice file, which some programs like ChiduBox, which I like using ChiduBox, unfortunately, sometimes files don't work right. It's called export files. So I'm actually in the right deal. I put my files like print ready and working and stuff like that. So this one, we're going to leave it windows and doors. We're just going to do all windows and doors. That way I know when I go into that file, and I'll show you here in a minute once this saves, or we're going to go confirm. And this is where it can take a while to export the slice file. But while it's doing that, we're going to go into print ready, because all the ones below you saw there, they were files I still needed work on. But I've already got the roof. The roof I don't have ready, but the walls. I have all the walls on flash drives and ready to print. So, but we go back here. These are the files. Let's see here. I don't do the glass, but this is for center building, doors, rear. We grabbed all 3 or I guess it's 4 of those files there. We grabbed all 4 of those, and that's what we just sliced. So that kind of shows you what we'll do. We're going to let the program slice, and it can take, I've had things take like 8-10 minutes to slice. Depends on how many layers. I mean, if it's got a ton of layers, it's going to take a while. This one is probably going to take another 3 minutes to do, and unfortunately, I'm not going to sit here and keep flapping my gums. So, after showing you that, we're going to switch back to the regular camera, and because this is running kind of slow because of my computer. So,
so as you can see, 3D printing is more complicated than what people realize, but on the flip side of it, it's not as bad as what a lot of people think it is. Okay. Once you learn the programs, it's just, you got to find the programs that work for you. I use, as I showed you, I'm using Satellite, Elegoo's new one, which I think is a replacement for Voxel Dance Tango. I've had decent success with the Voxel Dance Tango line. Cheeto Box is another good one. There are several slicing programs out there that that work well. You just have to figure out what brand of printer or I should say, what the brand of your printer recommends. Like I know Elegoo, they send out Cheeto Box Basic, and it used to be the Voxel Dance. Now it's the Satellite, which is basically kind of a cross between Cheeto Box and Satellite. I'm still trying to figure out all the little details of it, but anyways, it's been a while since we talked about 3D printing on here in that depth. I wanted to show you kind of what I've been doing, what I figured out to help you out. If maybe you got a 3D printer for Christmas, a resin 3D printer that is, or you were thinking about getting one, you got some Christmas money and you're thinking about getting one. We've already kind of talked about, should you do it? If, kind of one of those things where if all you're going to do is small parts, and that, that's fine to get one, but you don't need a big one, the big Saturn 3s or Saturn line like mine. You can get away with something smaller on the Elegoo line like a Mars. But I figured I'd jump on here and give you guys another video to the 3D printing one in this collection. It's been a little bit, and I apologize. There's been a lot going on. As you can see, my railroad I've been working on, and I've been focusing on that, focusing on the audio podcast. So anyways, thank you for watching. And, if you like what you see here and you'd like to help support us, by all means, head on over to patreon.com/ModelRailroadTalk, or you can head on over to buymeacoffee.com/ModelRailTalk. Over there, you can do one-time donation, whatever, support. Of course, all your funds go to maintaining equipment, paying for, I have to pay for every year for this now, since Spotify for our audio podcast. Plus, I have my video editing software now, all that good stuff. So check us out on Facebook, Model Railroad Talk. Head on over there, like our page. With TikTok, I'm trying to get our TikTok followers over here to YouTube. I prefer YouTube actually now. A lot more I can do with it. So thank you. And I keep forgetting to mention this, but our little intro there, where it's the little montage where the train goes by and stuff like that. Thank you to Warbonds, our good friend Eric over at Warbonds channel. Check him out. He's doing videos of his 1-inch GP60M build. Amazing work he's doing. I've actually helped him on some of it, not a lot, but I've done a little bit to help him out there. So head on over there and check him out as well. As always, if you like this, hit the subscribe, hit the like button. And if you don't mind notifications, hit the notifications button. So that way, whenever we come out with a new video for you guys get it. You get told about it. So thank you for watching. And as we always say, keep your train on the tracks.